So this is a clip that shows a preview of the presentation that I'm going to give to the Italian Senate tomorrow. I am presenting here a preview as also as an exercise to see how it it will go. Maybe you will find it interesting, and it will be in Italian, but this version is in English. So for those of us who do not understand Italian, and this presentation is based on my work with the Club of Rome, which is an association that studies the evolution of the economic system, human economic system over time. Let me say at the beginning that the Club of Rome has no fixed official opinion on technical matters such as energy, kinds of energy, renewable, nuclear, etc. It is what I'm saying today is my personal opinion, but I think rather compatible with what most of the members of the Club of Rome think. So, what is the Club of Rome? Is an association which was established in 1968, and which is known mainly for its work. It's a project. It's a report called "The Limits to Growth" in English. You see here the Italian edition, which became famous for good reasons because it was an extremely innovative idea and a study which used methods that for that time were extremely new and untested. But it was one of the first attempts to use artificial intelligence that is going beyond the capabilities of the human mind to analyze complex systems. Of course, they didn't have anything like our large language models. It was a standard computer programming at the time. But nevertheless, the computer could take into account the evolution, the parameters of a multi-parameter system, a complex system like the whole world, the economy, the pollution, population, agriculture, industrial production, resources, and it could produce a graph like this one, which is not a prediction. You could not see it as a prediction because the future essentially is unpredictable. The future can be imagined, not predicted. But if you imagine the future, then you can be prepared for what the future will bring. So, what this study was telling us is that, okay, if things remain the same, the economic structure remain the same, the financial system remains the same, and we continue to build our prosperity from the use of non-renewable resources, mainly fossil fuels, then at some moment the system is going to collapse. And this study said that it was to happen at some moment around the first 2 decades of the 20th century, 21st century. And you may be interested to know that already at the time, some people were asking, but what's going to happen when we start going down? Well, maybe there will be a lot of wars, maybe. And that was a good prediction. Very unfortunate. All right, so what are we seeing here? It is a system which goes in overshoot, goes beyond the capability it has to have resources to keep its growth, and then forcibly must go back to the limits to growth. This study was, as you probably know, was criticized, demonized, revised, and all kind of things. But after more than 50 years, it turned out to be remarkably prophetic, as much as you can expect for a study which extrapolates over more than 50 years. It's nearly impossible, but remarkably. The economy, the system in general, has been following more or less this curve. So it's some, obviously, all models are approximations. You need to modify the system that tries to evaluate the future. As you march into the future, you change your evaluation. And so this is what happened during the past 20 years or so. So the system has still remained with similar results, which the real world followed. And now, according to our situation, the world is very close to this point of no return when we are going to start declining, collapsing, maybe, if nothing is done. Let me tell you, these models have no provision for new technology. They only say what's going to happen, possibly, if you keep using the old technology. The key of the whole story is technology. These curves are the result of a new technology of long ago, oil, crude oil, earlier on coal, and now, if nothing new happens, they're going to go like this. But if you introduce new technologies like renewables, then things are going to change. I'll show you how, but in a moment, let's stay with this model. And let me ask you to notice something, the fact that the curves go down faster than they go. It is what I call the Seneca effect. Seneca, the Roman philosopher, he was one of the first to think about this thing. That, oh, um, you know, did you notice that things grow slowly, then ruin is rapid, which is probably you have noted that as well. So the model reproduced this feature of the real world, indeed. And but what happens if we introduce new technologies? Well, things can change. They do change. But you have when you introduce a new technology, what happens normally is that you destroy the old. Don't have necessarily a collapse of everything. There are many examples of limited economic system where you have this Seneca effect that see things collapsing. And what you see, the paradigmatic case is that of Blockbuster versus Netflix. Netflix had a better technology. Blockbuster had an entrenched technology. And when you have two technologies fighting, the best technology usually wins except when the politics intervene. But that's a long story to tell. In this story, in this case, Netflix and Blockbuster, you see how the better technology triumphed over the older technology. Blockbuster was still based on renting videotapes and were too old to be effective. Netflix, as you know, was much more flexible, much more modern. Um, and that is a typical example of a Seneca collapse, as I told you. And there are more examples, like when you consider this is coal versus renewable energy in United Kingdom. That too, you see the coal is going down rapidly because of a better technology, also because of depletion, but it went down also because it was replaced by gas, but in part also by renewables. Again, the same behavior, and that's a typical phenomenon in the economy of Europe. You see how car manufacturing has evolved in time, and Germany showed a classic Seneca collapse, Seneca cliff going down. Italy, the red line, had the same collapse several years before. In both cases, the car industry refused to move to better technology, to more efficient technology, electric cars, and they found themselves obsolete and replaced by new technologies, except that new technologies were better exploited by China, which is growing its car production, whereas the European car production is collapsing in larger part because of the refusal of Europe to accept new technologies. And that's very bad, especially for Italy, but let me not go into that. You see, another country which understood this point is Norway. Norway went through a collapse for combustion engine cars, which were rapidly replaced by electric vehicles. That electric vehicles, a car, and the car industry are proxies, are elements that tell us something about how the whole economy of a country works and moves, and that's how you can see how the system tries to adapt, but then it has to collapse eventually. When you have something better that comes, you cannot avoid it. So renewable energy is coming. Can we use it? Can we do this at the global level? Well, yes, we can do this, and these changes in technology are very rapid, very very rapid. As you see here, you have this picture provided by Rethink, I think an American think tank, showing us how in New York, in the beginning of the past century, you had a near complete transition from horse-driven carriages to modern, at least in the sense of having an internal combustion engine, cars, to go to electric cars took a longer time. One 10 years were not sufficient. It took a long time, but the transition started maybe 10 years ago. So in 10 years, you can see that some Chinese cities like Shanghai have the same kind of transformation. You cannot distinguish here very easily which car is electric and which car uses a thermal engine. But in China, you have this nice factor that a green plate means that the car is electric. So you can see here that all the cars that you see here are all electric. Now, probably not all these cars are electric, but a large fraction of them is. And that's, you don't need to look at this picture, but if you have a chance to go to Shanghai one of these days, you will notice that the city is quiet and the air is clean because most of the cars are electric, not combustion. So this transition is going on very quickly also in China, another case of a Seneca effect. So can we do the same for the world energy? In principle, we can. In principle, this is a study that we did a few years ago, but it is still valid, I think, and it shows how the Seneca collapse can, and in my opinion, will occur in any case for the fossil fuel industry. Their technology is obsolete. They are like Blockbuster. They are going to be replaced. However, the replacement is not necessarily painless unless we are willing to invest now on renewable energy. That is absolutely necessary because the collapse will happen anyway because of internal problems of the fossil fuel industry, which is obsolete, polluting, expensive, geostrategically impossible to manage. But if you have solar energy or wind energy, then you don't have the problem of having to bomb some countries to get at the oil. But this working on these models, you see that it is not easy to have a transition in which nobody will suffer, nobody will feel at least a little pain, because it takes investments, and that's nothing to do. When you invest something, you spend money that you will recover later. And this model shows how it is possible. It is possible, but right now we are not very much on track along this road. We are not investing enough. It will happen, but you can also build this model in such a way that you have a decline and then you go up again. It is possible. It depends on us what we want to do. But the point of all these studies is that it is fundamental, important to plan for the transition right now, not wait to have a big fossil fuel crisis or climate crisis could come if we continue using fossil fuels. And you see already that a crisis is coming right now. You see, the Qatar has lost 20% of its production of liquid natural gas, which means necessarily that the price is going to increase, as you see here, because there is the liquid natural gas is a global market. You have a loss of production, then your price must increase. It's basic economics. So I will leave you with the message that it is possible to move to a cleaner and less expensive energy system, and it is vital to do it now, especially for our country, Italy, for geostrategic reason to make us safer and to make us resilient to new shocks that could easily come in the current situation. But we need to invest money, effort, um, accept some changes because renewables are not completely invisible. People don't like to see wind towers or photovoltaic panels, but we have to accept that in terms of what we need to keep our country going. And thank you very much for your attention.